Oh, that's good there, Fury. Fancy kill run. Maybe just throws it a bit tighter, but it still lands. Here from Wilder. Good left hook as well from Wilder.
Oh, it's gone down. He's gone down. He's gone down.
Hey, it's Top Boxing News.
D'ailleurs, peut-être un peu plus chez Viviane.
Et là, moi, il va se
anything I said was disrespectful. She called me a fake champion, but it wasn't disrespectful. Maybe that's how she really feels, but I didn't take it as disrespect.
I don't understand that. Why is she calling you a fake WBC champion?
And I'm the real WBC champion because I fight against categories. It's earned, not given.
It's crazy. I don't know, like, she got sick. The WBC vacated her belt.
Okay.
I won it. That's why I have the WBC belt there. That's not my 68 belt, that's my middleweight belt. And all of a sudden, after I won a belt, they're like, okay, now she's WBC champion in recess. So the correct way for her to be announced is the WBO champion and WBC champion in recess. And my announcement is Clarissa Shields, the WBA, IBF, and WBC reigning champion. They vacated it. Be mad at WBC, not me. I just won it. I fought 10 rounds and beat her sparring partner for it.
You know, what Clarissa said is true in many ways. That if Christina Hammer's mad at somebody, it's not her.
It's not.
It's the WBC, because it was the WBC that made the decision to vacate Christina Hammer's belt. The question is why? We already know the particulars. We already know the circumstances. That ahead of her fight with Clarissa Shields, Christina Hammer became ill, and the fight didn't happen on the proposed date. It ended up getting postponed. But it was the WBC that made the decision to vacate the title. So in that way, if Christina Hammer's got a bone to pick with anybody, it's not Clarissa per se, at least not in regards to that. It's the WBC. And I myself have some questions regarding that decision. You see, in a lot of ways, it seems like the WBC made a decision to penalize Christina Hammer for pulling out of the Shields fight, for the fight not happening on the original proposed date. In a lot of ways, it seems like the WBC penalized her for it. And the question is, why? They didn't penalize Mikey Garcia when they ordered him to fight Jorge Linares and the fight didn't come off. They didn't penalize him or vacate his title. Currently, Deontay Wilder, he was ordered to fight Tyson Fury
by the WBC.
By the WBC, and as it stands right now, those guys aren't fighting next. Yet the WBC's not penalizing him for that either. And you got to think about the situation and the uniqueness of it, that Christina Hammer, when she was the WBC middleweight champion, her fight with Clarissa Shields was a unification fight. This wasn't Christina Hammer versus some mandatory challenger, some contender that worked their way to a title shot. This was her versus another champion like herself. So it's not even like it's a situation to where you're forced to satisfy the needs of a contender who worked his way to a title shot, but that title shot is not available due to extenuating circumstances. It's not a situation like that, because Clarissa wasn't a contender. Clarissa is a champion, was a champion, and is a champion.
Not a contender.
But in a lot of ways, it seems like the WBC and their decision, it seems like they just wanted to punish Christina Hammer because they vacated her title as a result of the fight getting postponed. You know, when they ordered Gary Russell to fight Leo Santa Cruz, we are fully aware that that fight has not come off, and we don't even know that the wheels are in motion for that fight. As it stands, there are no reports of ongoing negotiations between Gary Russell, the WBC champion, and Leo Santa Cruz, the WBA champion. The fight hasn't come off, yet that order got put out by the WBC months ago.
Months ago.
Since that time, Leo Santa Cruz has had one or two fights at least one, at minimum one. And the WBC didn't strip Gary Russell of his title as a result of that fight not coming off. So the question is, why did they make the decision to punish Christina Hammer for the fight getting postponed? Because in a lot of ways, that's what they did. You know, it seems like as soon as they saw that the fight was going to get postponed, they were in a hurry to take that belt from Christina to give it to Clarissa. Now, this isn't Clarissa's fault. It's not Clarissa's fault that the WBC made this decision. It's not something that she did or something that she caused to happen. So you can't point the blame at her. You can't point the finger at her. But you do have to point the finger at the WBC and try to understand just exactly what was their reasoning. What might have been going through their minds when they made that decision, because it seems awfully unfair to the reigning champion. What was the reigning champion? These are just my thoughts.
Let's hear it.
I think that the WBC might have made this decision for two reasons, possibly two reasons. One, they saw that the Shields versus Hammer fight wasn't going to be happening when, on the original proposed date, but they did want to collect sanctioning fees, and they knew that even though Hammer was withdrawing from the fight, Clarissa was going to move on. She was going to have another fight. And maybe the logic that they employed was, you know what? Since we're not going to be able to collect any sanctioning fees from a Shields versus Hammer fight because Hammer's pulling out due to illness, what we'll do is we will take the belt away from Hammer and put that same belt on the line in Clarissa's next fight. What we'll do is let Clarissa fight for the belt, that way we can collect some sanctioning fees from that fight, and we will label Christina a champion in recess. That way, as soon as she comes back, she'll have a claim towards the title in a fight that we can thereby order. That looks like more or less what the reasoning might have been. That they might have made this decision to take the belt from Christina and give it to Clarissa due to sanctioning fees. They're looking out for their own best interests. Whenever you want to know why something is really going on with most of these alphabets, all you gotta do is follow the money. From where the WBC was sitting, they may not have known just when exactly can we expect Christina Hammer to be back in fighting form. We don't want her holding our belt and she's just, somewhere recuperating. We want to collect sanctioning fees. So we'll just take the belt away from her and let Clarissa fight for it. Soon as Christina's back in functioning order, we can order that fight. I think that was the reasoning that they employed, and I think that those were the two motivating factors. One being the sanctioning fees that they wanted to collect, and two being that Christina Hammer, unlike some of the aforementioned WBC champions who also were ordered to fight fighters that they didn't end up fighting, Christina, unlike them, withdrew due to illness. And because of that, they don't really know when she'll be back in fighting form, so they made the decision to take the title away from her and allow Clarissa to fight for it. Now, I can more or less understand that reasoning, but I can also understand how Christina Hammer feels. How she's looking at this.
And feels raw about it.
And how that might chap her ass. That basically, Clarissa Shields got the belt.
Without fighting me.
That used to be my belt. She's calling herself a champion without having beaten me for it. So I can see why she'd feel raw about that. I can see why she might look at Clarissa Shields as less of a champion than herself. That you might have my belt, but you didn't beat me for it. You have to beat me for it before I can respect you as being a champion like myself. Now, regardless of which side of the argument you guys choose to agree with, one thing is certain, and it's that this further adds fuel to the fire, fuel to the rivalry between these two champions. If Christina Hammer didn't already dislike Clarissa Shields, this is all the more reason for her to dislike her. And this is all the more reason for her to fight hard to get that title back when this fight goes down. In other news, Frank Warren had this to say: Fury's interim fight was ESPN's call, out of our hands. Warren explained that he was fully on board with doing the rematch next, and so was Fury, but Top Rank and ESPN had other ideas. ESPN are insisting that he has a fight on there before he fights Wilder. Warren told BBC Radio 5 Live, it will give him bigger exposure, and thus make the pay-per-view a bigger attraction when they do the pay-per-view. Tyson wanted the fight with Wilder. I certainly wanted it. A little bit disappointed in some ways, but that's the decision they've made. And that decision is a decision that Deontay Wilder is none too happy about. He took to Twitter and said, "You sorry motherfucker. We knew you only said this because you knew you wasn't fighting me next. Hashtag clout chaser. You requested a warm-up fight first. I don't blame you though. I probably would too if I saw my brains splashed all over the canvas." So the question then becomes, who do you want to believe? Do you want to believe it from Frank Warren that this decision was out of their hands, that fighting Deontay Wilder next was not feasible based on what Top Rank and ESPN wanted for Tyson Fury, that it really wasn't their decision and they were on board for a Wilder rematch, for the rematch to be next? Do you believe it from them? That's the question. Well, if you want my take, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, this is what I think. I don't think that the rematch was important to Tyson Fury. I don't think that the rematch was important to Frank Warren. Not important enough to impede a potential partnership with Top Rank and ESPN. I don't think that they looked at that rematch as being oh so lucrative, oh so important, that they're going to wait and stall what could be a relationship with a very big network in the United States. I think that overall, at some point, they must have cross-compared what are the potential benefits of both scenarios, because you really can't look at this and have it both ways.
You can't.
Think about it. You're enthralled in deep negotiations for a rematch with Deontay Wilder. You guys are all, in the process of doing that. The wheels are in motion. And while this is going on, Deontay Wilder, Shelly Finkel, his whole team, they don't know that you're simultaneously trying to hash out a deal with Top Rank. They don't know anything about that. There's got to be a reason that they were left out of the loop in regards to that, because it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big determining factor as to whether or not the rematch would come off. And yet, Team Wilder didn't know nothing about it. You guys think that was some random shit, or do you think that that was on purpose?
It was on purpose.
Use your common sense, ladies and gents. Essentially, what I'm saying to the layman is that whether you want to believe Frank Warren right now and what he's saying, that basically ESPN and Top Rank don't want Fury to fight Wilder next, and that was their decision. Whether you want to believe that or not,
Pay attention.
Frank Warren and Tyson Fury are still the catalysts that put that in motion. Because you had to have known how forming a pact with Top Rank and ESPN might have affected your rematch with Deontay Wilder. Frank Warren wasn't born yesterday, and neither was Tyson Fury. They know as much about the relationship between Top Rank and the PBC as me and you do.
They ain't dumb.
So whether ESPN decided after you formed a partnership with them, remember, it would have been after. They didn't have any power over you and your fighter up until the point you formed a partnership with them. So even if after that, they made the decision that they don't want that to be Tyson Fury's next fight, just remember, you're the ones that gave them the power to do that. You're the ones that made it possible for them to have the last word. You're the ones that gave them the power to say that no, we don't want Tyson Fury to fight Deontay Wilder next. So before you allude to pointing the finger over at Top Rank, to pointing the finger over at ESPN saying, look, we were on board for a rematch, and it's them that didn't want it. Well, you're the one that handed power over to them. So, in many ways, it's still on you. You are still responsible. You are not exonerated of culpability, because none of this would have happened if it wasn't for you. Now, as I stated in my previous videos regarding this subject, I'm of the opinion that the Deontay Wilder rematch didn't rank very highly on their to-do list in comparison with the money that they could make fighting on ESPN. There are a lot of people out there that are going to jump to different conclusions as to why the rematch isn't happening next. Now, the obvious answer that some guys are going to have, likely Deontay Wilder's fans, is that Tyson Fury is ducking Deontay Wilder. That after having experienced his power and being put on the canvas 2 times, he doesn't want to have to go through that again. There are those people.
There are.
Then there are other people, like myself, who feel they probably were going to go ahead with the rematch, but they saw what they stood to make with Top Rank, with ESPN, and they were willing to sacrifice the rematch for the potential gains of that partnership. That it was more of a business decision. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if Tyson Fury were afraid of Deontay Wilder, then he never would have fought the man in the first place. Tyson Fury was under no obligation to fight Deontay Wilder in the first fight. That wasn't a fight that he had to take. He could have had several tune-ups leading up to a fight like that. Yet he chose to have the fight, and he put on a performance that many feel was enough for him to have won a decision. It's not one way. You can't just look at Wilder's side of the argument because you like him and say, yeah, he's the one that's right. If Tyson Fury was some squirrely kind of guy, then he would have never fought Wilder in the first place. But he did. And not only did he fight him, he fought him in his backyard.
Did Wilder do that?
Ask yourself a question. Do you think Deontay Wilder would have been willing to go to the UK for that fight?
In a rematch.
Do you think that if the roles were reversed, Deontay Wilder would have squared off with someone like Tyson Fury if the roles were reversed? That's saying that if Deontay Wilder were coming off a weight cut, if Deontay Wilder hadn't fought an elite opponent in many, many years, do you think that Deontay Wilder would have fought Tyson Fury under those circumstances? It's likely no.
Hell no.
That is likely a no. So think things through before you jump to the conclusion that Tyson Fury is somehow afraid of him. I I'm not saying that Tyson Fury or Frank Warren really wanted the rematch. I'm not sold on that. What I am saying is, if they chose to go another route, it really wasn't due to fear so much as a business decision. That we didn't make so much money with Deontay Wilder in that pay-per-view here in the States that we should walk away from a potential deal with Top Rank and ESPN. That if it comes right down to it and we've got to choose, then we're going to choose ESPN. We're going to choose to form a partnership with them and Top Rank because we're going to make so much more money with them than we would have made in a rematch with Wilder. That it was more of a business decision than a decision motivated by fear. And the fact that it's a business decision, it doesn't exonerate Frank Warren and Tyson Fury of culpability, the fact that it's a business decision. But at its base, at the heart of it, that is what I think happened. That is what I think this was, a business decision. They made several concessions to Deontay Wilder for the first fight. You understand? They're fighting in his backyard.
That's a concession.
Where they could have easily sold this fight even better and made more money in the UK. But they made that concession to Deontay Wilder. Do you guys think that Deontay Wilder would have reciprocated that? Do you think Wilder would have been willing to have the rematch in the UK? It's likely a no, right?
Right.
So from where Frank Warren and Tyson Fury are sitting, they got to be thinking to themselves that, you know what?
What?
We just had some exposure in the United States with this pay-per-view against Deontay Wilder. And we can build on that. A relationship with Top Rank and ESPN, a relationship with them, we can grow. We can further expand our audience so that we don't have to keep making concessions. That might have been the train of thought that occurred to Frank Warren, that occurred to Tyson Fury in the midst of negotiating a rematch.
Might have been.
That we are limiting our pool of options if we walk away from a situation with ESPN and Top Rank, and the potential gains of a Deontay Wilder rematch don't trump what we could make with them, so we're going to go with them. Now, for Wilder's fans, this is specifically for them, because these guys are always mad at some shit when it doesn't benefit Deontay Wilder. Here's a fucking newsflash. Your guy said he's a free agent. Your guy said he can fight anyone, anywhere. So you guys, as his fans, really should be holding him to that. That, okay, if that's the case, then you fighting Fury on ESPN really shouldn't even be a problem, and the door's still open for a rematch, because that's essentially what everybody's saying. Not just Frank Warren, not just Tyson Fury, but Bob Arum and the people over there at ESPN. They're not closing the door altogether for a rematch. So if it is true that Wilder's a free agent, then the fight's still on the table. I think what they're really mad about that they don't want to say is that old Al Heyman keeps his guys on a short leash. And if making a fight with Tyson Fury, making a rematch, I should say, with Tyson Fury, if that requires Wilder to go over to ESPN, Al Heyman's not likely to let him do that. That's what they're really mad about. The short leash that PBC fighters are kept on. Oh, well, that's tough fucking titty. Shouldn't run around calling yourself a free agent when you know you got a dog leash on you. But I digress. You know, Frank Warren is saying that the final call in regards to the rematch came from Top Rank and ESPN. And whether or not you want to believe that is besides the point, because you're the one that handed that power over to them while you were supposed to be negotiating a rematch. So no matter how you want to spin it now, it still really is your fault.